What happens when an alien empire makes the fatal mistake of targeting what humanity loves most? They thought they understood us, saw our divisions, our conflicts, our seeming chaos. They studied our broadcasts, analyzed our wars, calculated our weaknesses. The Karathi Dominion believed humans were just another primitive species to be harvested and controlled. They were wrong. When they took Sarah and Michael Chun, twin prodigies barely 16 years old, brilliant minds working on breakthrough technologies, they didn't just kidnap two children. They awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping since we first looked up at the stars with hungry eyes. Something that had driven us from caves to cities, from sailing ships to starships. The twins weren't just victims. They were the spark that would ignite the greatest military response in human history. Because there's one thing every alien species in the galaxy would soon learn. You can attack our ships, destroy our colonies, even burn our worlds. But when you take our children, when you harm the innocent, humanity doesn't just fight back. We become something else entirely. Something that makes the darkness between the stars seem warm and welcoming compared to the cold fury of the human heart. This is the story of how two missing teenagers turned humanity from a barely spacefaring species into the most feared force in the galaxy. This is the story of what happens when humanity answers with fury. The morning that would change everything began like any other at the Chun household in New Geneva Colony. Sarah Chun sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex mathematical equations that would have made university professors weep with envy. At 16, she was already 3 years ahead in her quantum physics studies, her mind working through problems that challenged some of the brightest scientists in human space. Her twin brother Michael occupied the room next door, though the wall between them might as well have been transparent given how often they collaborated through their neural link interfaces. While Sarah focused on theoretical physics, Michael's passion lay in practical engineering applications. His room looked like a workshop exploded in it, with prototype devices, modified tools, and half-assembled contraptions covering every available surface. Dr. Elena Chun watched her children from the kitchen doorway, a mixture of pride and worry crossing her features. As one of the colony's leading xenobiologists, she understood better than most how dangerous the galaxy could be. The recent reports from the frontier worlds had been troubling. Ships disappearing without distress signals, entire research stations going silent, and strange energy signatures detected at the edge of human space. "Mom, have you seen my fusion battery pack?" Michael called out, his voice carrying the particular note of frustrated concentration that both twins shared when working on their projects. The one that nearly melted a hole through the lab floor last week. Elena replied with dry humor. "It's in containment storage where it belongs." "But I need it for the gravitational field generator," Michael protested, emerging from his room with his dark hair sticking up at impossible angles. Sarah's calculations show we can create a localized space-time distortion if we adjust the field harmonics properly. Sarah appeared a moment later, her own hair equally disheveled, but her eyes bright with excitement. "We're so close, Mom. If this works, we could revolutionize space travel. No more waiting months to reach the outer colonies. We could cut travel time by 90%. Elena's heart swelled with pride, even as a chill of fear ran down her spine. Her children were brilliant, perhaps dangerously so. The kind of breakthrough they were working on would attract attention from across human space. And, given the recent troubles at the frontier, attention was the last thing she wanted for her family. "Breakfast first," she said firmly. "Revolutionary physics can wait for pancakes." The twins exchanged one of their wordless communications, the kind that only siblings who had shared everything since birth could manage, then reluctantly headed for the kitchen. Elena followed, trying to shake the feeling that this might be one of the last normal mornings they would ever share. New Geneva Colony had been humanity's pride when it was established 23 years ago. Built around a terraforming station on the edge of human space, it represented everything humanity aspired to be among the stars. The colony housed over 50,000 people, mostly scientists, researchers, and their families. It was a place where the brightest minds in human space came to push the boundaries of knowledge and technology. The colony's location, however, also made it vulnerable. Far from the core worlds, protected by only a small naval patrol, it relied on its isolation and supposed insignificance for protection. The colonies closer to Earth were heavily fortified and defended. New Geneva was considered safe simply because there was nothing there worth taking. That assessment was about to prove tragically wrong. As the Chun family sat down to breakfast, orbital sensors detected the first signs of trouble. The automated systems registered an anomalous gravity distortion at the edge of the system, but initial analysis suggested it was merely a passing asteroid field. The duty officer glanced at the readings, noted them in the log, and continued with his routine checks. In space, massive shapes began to resolve out of hyperspace distortions. The Karathi Dominion had arrived, their bioships sliding through dimensions like predators emerging from deep water. Each vessel was a living thing, grown rather than built, with hulls that could heal themselves and weapons that fired projectiles of condensed plasma. The Karathi had been observing human space for months, cataloging weaknesses and identifying targets of opportunity. New Geneva Colony had caught their attention not because of its strategic value, but because of its scientific resources. The Karathi were collectors, taking the best and brightest from conquered species to serve in their massive research complexes. They had identified several valuable targets on the colony, but none more promising than the Chun twins. The Karathi understood genius when they encountered it. Their own species had evolved to recognize and harvest intelligence from other races. The twins' research into space-time manipulation represented exactly the kind of breakthrough the Dominion sought. Young minds were easier to reprogram, and the twins' potential made them prizes worth considerable risk. Admiral Vexhai commanded the Karathi assault fleet from the bridge of the living battleship Flesh Render. The creature's nervous system interfaced directly with the Admiral's own neural pathways, allowing thought-speed control over every aspect of the ship. Around him, his subordinates monitored the approach vectors and target priorities. Minimal resistance detected, reported Subcommander Crick Thel, her chitinous fingers dancing across biointerfaces that pulsed with organic light. The human defensive grid appears to be designed for asteroid deflection rather than military engagement. As expected, Vexhai replied, his mental commands causing the fleet to adjust formation. These border colonies rely on their isolation for protection. Deploy the harvesting pods as soon as we achieve orbital control. Priority targets are the scientific facilities and the educational complexes. The Karathi strategy was simple and effective. Overwhelm the minimal defenses quickly, deploy specialized biopods to capture valuable specimens, then withdraw before any significant human military response could arrive. They had executed similar operations against dozens of species across the galaxy. Humanity would be no different, or so they believed. The first indication of trouble at New Geneva came when the orbital defense grid began screaming warnings. Commander Sarah Torres, the colony's military liaison, had been reviewing supply requisitions when every alarm in the command center erupted simultaneously. "Report," she barked, rushing to the main display where her small staff was frantically trying to process incoming data. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the system edge. Lieutenant Morrison called out, his voice tight with stress. Configuration unknown, but they're big. Minimum 12 vessels, possibly more still incoming. Torres felt ice form in her stomach. New Geneva's defenses consisted of automated orbital platforms designed to deflect space debris and a handful of patrol ships that were currently on the far side of the system. Against a fleet of unknown hostiles, they were essentially defenseless. "Transmit emergency beacon to Fleet Command," she ordered. "Full priority, request immediate assistance." Then, Give me a line to Colony Administrator Hendricks. The main screen lit up with tactical displays as the sensor grid tracked the approaching vessels. What they showed made Torres' blood run cold. The ships were massive, organic-looking things that moved with a fluid grace no human vessel could match. And they were heading directly for New Geneva. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel," Communications Specialist Park reported. "Put it through." The hologram that appeared showed a creature that belonged in humanity's worst nightmares. Vexhai stood nearly 3 meters tall, his elongated skull crowned with chitinous ridges. His 4 arms ended in hands that bore too many joints, while his dark eyes held an intelligence that was utterly alien and completely pitiless. Human colony designation New Geneva. The creature spoke, its words translated by some automated system into perfect English. "You have been selected for incorporation into the Korathi Dominion. Resistance is futile. Surrender your scientific personnel and research data, and your civilian population will be relocated to suitable worlds. Refuse, and we will take what we require by force." Torres stepped forward, every instinct screaming at her to appear strong in the face of this alien horror. "I am Commander Sarah Torres, military liaison for New Geneva Colony. You are in violation of Terran space and colonial protection protocols. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Vexhai's response was something that might have been laughter if it hadn't sounded like grinding stone. "Your threats are amusing, human. You have no ships capable of challenging us, no weapons that can penetrate our biohulls, and no allies close enough to assist. We will begin harvesting operations in 1 of your hours. Use the time to prepare your scientific staff for transport." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. At the Chun household, the emergency sirens were beginning to wail across the colony. Elena's face went pale as she recognized the specific pattern. It was a signal for external military threat, something that hadn't sounded in the colony's 23-year history. "Mom!" Sarah's voice was small, suddenly, sounding much younger than her 16 years. "Get to the emergency bunker," Elena said, her xenobiologist knowledge of alien species flooding back with terrifying clarity. She had read reports about vessels matching the description coming through on the emergency broadcasts. The Korathi Dominion. Species collectors. Slavers who specialized in taking the most intelligent members of conquered populations. "But our research," Michael protested. "The gravitational field data, the prototype designs. Forget the research." Elena snapped, fear making her voice harsh. "Get to the bunker now." But as the family ran toward the residential emergency facilities, Elena's scientific mind was already working. The twins' research wasn't just valuable to humanity. It would be incredibly valuable to any spacefaring species. And if the Korathi were really species collectors, focusing on intelligence and scientific capability, her children weren't just in danger. They were primary targets. The realization hit her like a physical blow, but there was no time to process it. The sirens were getting louder, and through the residential complex's windows, she could see the first signs of panic spreading through the colony. People were running in all directions, some heading for emergency shelters, others trying to reach the spaceport. "This way," Elena called, guiding her children toward the nearest bunker entrance. But even as they ran, she couldn't shake the feeling that hiding might not be enough. The Korathi hadn't come this far just to be deterred by reinforced shelters and emergency protocols. They had come to take her children. In space, the Korathi bioships achieved orbital position with predatory efficiency. The colony's defensive platforms managed exactly 3 minutes of resistance before the organic weapons dissolved their hulls with bioacid projectiles. The patrol ships racing back from the system's edge wouldn't arrive for another 4 hours. New Geneva Colony was completely at the mercy of the Korathi Dominion, and the Korathi had no mercy to give. The emergency bunker beneath New Geneva's residential district hummed with frightened voices and the steady thrum of life support systems. Elena and Chun held her twins close, their bodies pressed against hers in the cramped space that housed nearly 200 colonists. The bunker had been designed for asteroid impact emergencies, not alien invasion. The air recyclers struggled with the load, and the temperature was rising despite the cooling systems working at maximum capacity. "How long can we stay down here?" whispered Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who had been among the colony's first settlers. Her question echoed what everyone was thinking but afraid to voice. Dr. Marcus Webb, the colony's chief administrator, consulted his portable display with grim efficiency. "The bunkers have supplies for 72 hours, he announced to the gathered refugees. "After that, we'll need to consider other options." Sarah Chun felt her twin brother's hand find hers in the dim emergency lighting. Their mental link, forged by years of shared experiences and collaborative work, carried emotions more clearly than words ever could. Michael's fear matched her own, but underneath it was something else. Determination. Even here, trapped like frightened animals, his mind was working on solutions. Through their shared consciousness, Sarah felt Michael analyzing the bunker's construction, calculating structural stress points, and emergency exit possibilities. His engineering mind never stopped working, even in crisis. She squeezed his hand, sending him her own observations about the bunker's power distribution and life support efficiency. Above them, the sounds of the invasion were growing louder. The constant vibration through the colony's infrastructure told a story of systematic destruction and occupation. Heavy impacts shook dust from the bunker's ceiling, and more than once the lights flickered ominously. "They're not just attacking," Elena murmured, her xenobiologist training helping her interpret the sounds. "This is methodical. They're dismantling specific systems while preserving others. This isn't random destruction." Her analysis sent a chill through the gathered colonists. Random destruction they could understand. Systematic occupation suggested something far worse. On the surface, Admiral Vexhi's harvesting operation proceeded with ruthless efficiency. Karathi biopods, looking like massive organic insects, had deployed across the colony's key facilities. Each pod housed specialized collection teams trained in rapid specimen extraction and data retrieval. The aliens moved through New Geneva's research facilities with practiced precision. Their bioscanners identified valuable technology and scientific data, while their capture teams rounded up personnel based on predetermined priority lists. The Karathi had been planning this operation for months, studying the colony's broadcasts and identifying their most valuable assets. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, the colony's lead physicist, was among the first to be taken. The Karathi bio-soldiers found her in her laboratory, frantically trying to destroy sensitive research data. Their nerve disruptors dropped her without permanent harm, but her unconscious form was quickly secured in a biostasis pod for transport. Professor Chen's research laboratory was a primary target. The Karathi had monitored the twins' theoretical work through intercepted communications and identified their space-time manipulation research as potentially revolutionary. When the collection team found the lab empty, their bioscanners immediately began tracking the family's scent trail. Subcommander Crickthell oversaw the search personally. Her species had evolved from pack hunters, and tracking fleeing prey was coded into her genetic memory. The scent trail led directly to the residential emergency bunkers. Priority targets located, she reported to Admiral Vexhi through their neural link. The human juveniles are in the underground shelter facility. Recommend immediate extraction. Jose Vexhi Ziplit, but exercise caution. Young minds are fragile, and these specimens show exceptional promise. I want them taken alive and unharmed. The first sign of trouble in the bunker came when the emergency lighting began to flicker more frequently. Dr. Webb checked his system's display and frowned. "We're losing power to the upper levels," he announced. "Something's interfering with the main grid." Elena felt her blood turn to ice water. Her scientific mind immediately understood the implications. The aliens weren't trying to breach the bunker through brute force. They were systematically shutting down the colony's infrastructure to force the bunker inhabitants to the surface. "They're going to cut life support," she whispered to her children. "They want to drive us out." But before anyone could respond to this realization, a new sound echoed through the bunker. It started as a low vibration, barely perceptible, but quickly grew into a rhythmic pounding that seemed to come from directly above their heads. "They're digging," Dr. Webb said, his voice hollow with despair. "They're coming through the surface access." The pounding intensified, accompanied by a sound like acid eating through metal. The bunker's reinforced ceiling, designed to withstand asteroid impact, was being dissolved by alien bioweapons. Through the growing hole, strange bioluminescent light began to filter down, casting eerie shadows across the terrified faces of the colonists. Michael Chen's engineering mind raced through possibilities. The bunker had 3 exits, but 2 led directly to the surface where the aliens controlled everything. The third was a maintenance tunnel that connected to the colony's waste processing center. It wasn't designed for human travel, but it might offer an escape route. He shared this information with Sarah through their mental link, and she immediately began calculating the tunnel's dimensions and structural integrity based on the colony's blueprints she had memorized during their research into the colony's power grid. "Mom," Sarah whispered urgently. "The waste processing tunnel. Section 7 connects to the industrial district." Elena looked at her daughter with sudden hope, then glanced toward the maintenance access panel on the bunker's far wall. The tunnel would be dangerous, possibly lethal, if the atmospheric recycling systems had been compromised. But staying meant certain capture. Above them, the bioacid had eaten completely through the ceiling. Chitinous appendages began probing downward, followed by bioscanners that swept the bunker with alien sensors. The Karathi had found them. Priority targets identified. Subcommander Crickfell's voice echoed from some kind of translation device. "Surrender the human juveniles designated Chun, Sarah, and Chun Michael. Compliance will result in minimal harm to remaining specimens." The bunker fell silent except for the sound of frightened breathing. Elena felt every eye in the shelter turned toward her family. Some faces showed sympathy, others calculation. In a crisis, people made desperate choices. "Take them," someone whispered from the back of the bunker. "Give them what they want." "They're just children," Mrs. Patterson said firmly, moving to stand between the Chun family and the access hole. "They're children who might save all of us," Dr. Webb replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Elena saw the moment the decision crystallized in the bunker. Fear was overriding human solidarity. People were calculating odds, weighing the lives of 2 teenagers against the safety of 200 adults. It was a cold calculation, but not an unreasonable one. Except Elena wasn't going to let it happen. "Sarah, Michael," she whispered. "The tunnel. Now." The twins didn't hesitate. Years of following their mother's instructions in laboratory emergencies had trained them to trust her judgment completely. They slipped toward the maintenance access while Elena stepped forward to address the alien presence above. "I am Dr. Elena Chun," she called up to the probing scanners. "I'm a xenobiologist with full clearance for first contact protocols. If you want to negotiate for my children, you'll follow proper diplomatic procedures." It was a desperate gambit, but it bought precious seconds. The Karathi scanners paused, processing this new information. Subcommander Crickfell's hunting instincts were confused by prey that offered to negotiate rather than flee. During that moment of alien confusion, Sarah and Michael reached the maintenance tunnel. The access panel had been designed for automated systems, not human entry, but Michael's small frame allowed him to squeeze through the opening. Sarah followed, her heart pounding as she heard her mother continuing to stall the aliens above. The maintenance tunnel was a nightmare of pipes, conduits, and flowing waste that made breathing difficult and navigation treacherous. But it was also unmonitored and undefended. The twins crawled through the narrow space, following Michael's mental map of the colony's infrastructure. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of the bunker being breached. Alien voices mixed with human screams, and the distinctive whine of neural disruptors. Their mother's voice was among those being silenced. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face, but she forced herself to keep moving. Their mother had given them this chance. They couldn't waste it. The tunnel seemed to stretch forever, but finally they reached the industrial district access point. Michael worked the manual release mechanism while Sarah monitored the sounds behind them. The aliens had discovered their escape route, but the tunnel's narrow confines would slow pursuit. They emerged into the colony's waste processing center, a facility that was apparently too low priority for immediate Karathi occupation. The massive recycling machinery still hummed with automated efficiency, processing the colony's waste into usable materials. "We can't stay here," Sarah whispered. "They'll track us eventually." Michael nodded, his mind already working on their next move. The industrial district had several possibilities, but most led back to areas under alien control. However, there was one option that might work. "The maintenance bay for the ore processing facility," he said. "It has independent power and sealed atmospheric systems. And more importantly, it has fabrication equipment." Sarah understood immediately. If they could reach the fabrication facility, they could build something. A communication device to call for help, maybe even weapons if they could access the right materials. Their research into gravitational field manipulation might be applicable to defensive systems. But first, they had to survive long enough to try. The twins made their way through the industrial complex, staying in the shadows and avoiding the alien bioscanners that swept the area in regular patterns. The Karathi were methodical hunters, but their search patterns were designed for open terrain. The maze of industrial equipment provided cover that their sensors couldn't easily penetrate. They reached the ore processing facility as the sounds of systematic searching grew closer. The maintenance bay was exactly as Michael remembered it, a self-contained workspace with fabrication equipment and raw material storage. More importantly, it was shielded from most sensors by the massive ore processing machinery. "We can work here," Sarah said, examining the equipment with the eye of someone who had spent years building prototype devices. "But what do we build? A weapon? A communication device?" Michael was studying the facility's power distribution system, his engineering mind seeing possibilities that his twins' theoretical knowledge might have missed. "Something better," he said slowly. "We build a trap." Sarah followed his gaze to the massive ore processing machinery that surrounded their hiding place. The equipment was designed to manipulate raw materials at the molecular level, powered by fusion reactors that could generate tremendous energy. In the right hands, with the right modifications, it could become something the aliens weren't expecting. "The gravitational field research," Sarah whispered, understanding flooding through their shared mental link. "We can use the processing equipment to generate a localized space-time distortion. Not for transportation, but for destruction," Michael finished. "If we can modify the field generators and tie them into the processing facility's power grid, we can create a gravitational anomaly that will tear apart anything within a 50-meter radius." It was desperate, dangerous, and probably suicidal. The energy levels required would likely kill anyone in the immediate area. But it would also eliminate the alien search teams and possibly damage their bioships enough to give the colony a fighting chance. The twins looked at each other, seeing their own fear and determination reflected in familiar eyes. They were 16 years old, alone, and facing alien invaders who had taken their mother and destroyed their home. But they were also the children of humanity's finest scientists, trained from birth to solve impossible problems and push the boundaries of what was possible. The Karathi had made one critical error in their assessment of human capabilities. They had underestimated what brilliant, desperate, and furious children could accomplish when their backs were against the wall. Sarah and Michael Chun began to work, their hands moving with practiced precision as they started building humanity's first response to the Karathi Dominion. It wouldn't be diplomacy or negotiation. It would be a weapon that turned physics itself into an instrument of vengeance. The ore processing facility hummed with deadly purpose as Sarah and Michael Chun worked through the night, transforming mining equipment into humanity's most desperate weapon. Their hands moved with the precision of surgeons and the speed of the condemned because they knew the Karathi search teams were closing in with each passing hour. Michael lay beneath the primary field generator, his small frame allowing him access to components that adult engineers would never reach. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he rewired power distribution circuits, rerouting energy flows from the facility's fusion reactors into patterns they were never designed to handle. Field coherence at 63%, Sarah reported from her position at the main control console. Her fingers danced across holographic displays, adjusting theoretical calculations in real time as the equipment responded to her brother's modifications. We need another 12% minimum for stable anomaly generation. Working on it, Michael grunted, his voice strained as he stretched to reach a particularly stubborn connection. The power coupling for Section 7 is fighting me, but I think I can bypass it through the secondary grid. Their mental link carried more than words. Through their shared consciousness, Sarah felt Michael's physical exhaustion, his growing concern about the energy levels they were generating, and his absolute determination to complete their work. In return, she shared her own calculations and growing excitement as the mathematics began to align properly. The gravitational field weapon they were building was based on their previous research, but scaled up to dimensions that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. Instead of the controlled, precise manipulations they had designed for space travel, they were creating something crude, powerful, and utterly destructive. The theory was elegant in its simplicity. Generate a localized gravitational distortion powerful enough to disrupt the molecular bonds of any matter within its effective radius. The Karathi bioships, for all their organic sophistication, were still made of atoms held together by electromagnetic and strong nuclear forces. Overwhelm those forces with gravity, and even living starships would tear themselves apart. Sarah, we have a problem. Michael's voice carried a note of worry that made his sister look up from her calculations. What is it? The power draw for full activation. It's going to require the entire facility's output for approximately 43 seconds. That includes life support, atmospheric processing, everything. Sarah felt her stomach clench as she understood the implication. They could build their weapon, and it would work exactly as intended, but activating it would kill them. The ore processing facility's life support would shut down completely during the activation sequence, and the gravitational distortion itself would be lethal to anyone within 50 meters. There has to be another way, she whispered, running new calculations through her head. What if we stage the power draw? Pull energy gradually and store it in capacitors. Already considered it, Michael replied, his engineering practicality cutting through hope. The facility doesn't have the storage capacity, and even if it did, the gradual power buildup would show up on every sensor the Karathi have. They detect it and stop us long before we could activate. The twins fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts, but connected by the mental link that let them share their growing despair. They had found a way to strike back at their captors, to make the aliens pay for taking their mother and destroying their home. But using it meant certain death. Above them, the sounds of searching had grown closer throughout the night. Alien voices called to each other in their chittering language, while bioscanners swept the industrial complex with increasing thoroughness. The twins estimated they had perhaps 2 hours before the search reached the ore processing facility. We do it anyway, Sarah said quietly. Michael's head appeared from beneath the field generator, his face streaked with grease and determination. Sarah, no. There has to be another solution. Maybe we can modify the activation sequence, or find a way to shield the control room from the gravitational effects. With what materials? Sarah asked gently. Look around us, Michael. We have mining equipment and raw ore. Nothing that could protect us from a gravitational anomaly powerful enough to tear apart starships. Then we keep working. Find another approach. Build something different. Sarah felt her brother's desperation through their mental link, his engineer's mind refusing to accept a problem without a solution. But her theoretical physicist training had taught her to recognize when mathematics imposed absolute limits. Some problems genuinely had no solution that satisfied all requirements. "Michael, listen to me," she said, moving to kneel beside him. "Mom bought us time to escape so we could do something meaningful. This weapon could save everyone else in the colony. The people hiding in other bunkers, the children in the educational complex, all the families the Karathi want to take as slaves." "I'm not ready to die," Michael whispered. And for the first time since their escape, he sounded like the 16-year-old boy he was instead of the brilliant engineer who had been working through the night. "Neither am I," Sarah admitted. "But I'm not ready to let our mother's sacrifice be meaningless either. And I'm not ready to let the Karathi take everyone we've ever cared about." The twins held each other in the dim lighting of the maintenance bay, sharing fear and comfort through their mental connection. Around them, their makeshift weapon hummed with barely contained power, waiting for the final connections that would make it operational. In orbit above New Geneva, Admiral Vexhai was growing increasingly impatient with the search for the missing human juveniles. His collection teams had secured most of the colony's scientific personnel and research data, but the two specimens he most wanted remained elusive. "Report," he commanded Subcommander Crickthell through their neural link. "The tracking teams have narrowed the search to the industrial complex," she replied. "Biosyn analysis indicates the targets used the colony's waste processing system to evade initial capture. They show considerable intelligence and resourcefulness for juveniles. Intelligence is precisely why we need them." Vexhai responded with growing irritation. "Their research into gravitational manipulation could advance our understanding by centuries. Continue the search. Use whatever resources necessary." What the Admiral didn't know was that his prey was already putting that same research to use in ways he could never have anticipated. The Karathi understood many things about the species they conquered, but they had never encountered anything quite like human ingenuity combined with human desperation. Back in the ore processing facility, the twins had resumed their work with grim determination. If they were going to die, they would make their deaths count for something. The weapon would work. The Karathi would pay a price for their invasion that would echo across the galaxy. "Final power coupling complete," Michael reported as he emerged from beneath the field generator for the last time. "All we need now is the activation sequence." Sarah had been working on that exact problem, designing a control system that would allow them to trigger the weapon remotely. Not remotely enough to save their lives, but perhaps with enough delay to let them make peace with what they were about to do. 30-second delay from activation command to full power draw, she said. "That gives us time to say what we need to say." Michael nodded, understanding. 30 seconds to speak to their mother one last time through the family communication system, assuming it was still functional. 30 seconds to record a message explaining what they had built and why they had used it. 30 seconds to make their deaths meaningful to the people who would survive because of their sacrifice. "There's something else," Sarah added quietly. "I've been monitoring the emergency frequencies." Fleet Command received the colony's distress signal. A relief force is en route, but they won't arrive for another 18 hours. 18 hours the colony doesn't have, Michael said. "The Karathi will have completely stripped the place by then, but if we can eliminate their ground forces and damage their ships, the survivors could hold out until help arrives. The remaining defense platforms might be enough to protect the bunkers if the Karathi fleet is crippled." It was a slim hope, but it was something. Their weapon could buy time for rescue, even if they wouldn't live to see it. As dawn broke over New Geneva Colony, the Karathi search teams finally located the ore processing facility. Bioscanners detected human life signs within the complex, and Subcommander Crickthell deployed her best hunters to surround the building. Targets confirmed inside the primary facility, she reported to Admiral Vexhai, beginning final extraction procedures. In the maintenance bay, proximity alarms began screaming as the twins' improvised sensor network detected the approaching aliens. Sarah and Michael looked at each other one final time, seeing their own fear and resolve reflected in familiar eyes. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked. "No," Michael replied honestly. "But I'm ready anyway." Sarah's hand moved to the activation control, a simple switch that would begin their 30-second countdown to oblivion. Around them, their gravitational field weapon hummed with deadly potential, ready to demonstrate what human genius could accomplish when driven by love, loss, and absolute fury. "For Mom," Sarah whispered. "For everyone," Michael agreed. The Karathi bio-soldiers breached the facility's outer doors just as Sarah threw the switch. In 30 seconds, the aliens would learn that they had made a critical error in their assessment of human capabilities. They had assumed that intelligence without military training was harmless. They were about to discover that the most dangerous humans weren't the soldiers who fought with weapons. They were the children who fought with physics itself. The countdown began, and with it, humanity's first real answer to the Karathi Dominion. Not diplomacy, not negotiation, not surrender. Pure, mathematical vengeance that would rewrite the fundamental forces of reality to express the fury of two teenagers who had lost everything they loved. In 18 hours, the relief fleet would arrive to find New Geneva colony scarred but surviving. They would find detailed records of the weapon the twins had built, along with their final message explaining how it worked and why they had used it. But first, the Karathi Dominion was about to learn what happened when humanity's children decided that some things were worth dying for. The countdown reached 15 seconds when Subcommander Krickthel's bio-soldiers breached the inner chamber of the ore processing facility. Their chitinous armor gleamed under the industrial lighting as they swept into the maintenance bay with predatory grace, nerve disruptors ready to pacify their young targets. What they found instead was two human juveniles standing calmly beside a massive piece of jury-rigged equipment that hummed with barely contained power. The energy readings their bioscanners detected were unlike anything in Karathi experience, showing power levels that should have been impossible to generate from mining equipment. Priority targets located, Krickthl reported through her neural link, her hunting instinct screaming warnings she didn't understand. Energy signatures indicate unknown weapons technology. Recommend immediate extraction. Sarah and Michael Chun stood hand in hand in the center of the maintenance bay, their faces calm despite the alien soldiers surrounding them. The twins had found an unexpected peace in their final moments, their mental link carrying shared memories of their childhood, their mother's love, and their determination to make their deaths meaningful. 10 seconds, Sarah said softly, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. The Karathi soldiers hesitated, recognizing the tone, if not the words. Every predator species understood the sound of prey that had stopped running and turned to fight. Their bioscanners were detecting massive energy buildup in the equipment around them, power levels climbing towards something that made their alien instincts scream danger. "Human juveniles," Krickthl spoke through her translation device. "You will surrender immediately. Resistance will result in pain compliance measures." 5 seconds, Michael replied, his engineer's mind tracking the weapon's activation sequence with absolute precision. Admiral Vexhai felt the first ripples of gravitational distortion through his bioship's nervous system. The living vessel's organic sensors detected space-time fluctuations from the planet's surface, anomalies that suggested technology far beyond what the Karathi databases indicated humans possessed. "Subcommander, extract immediately," he commanded. "Whatever the humans have built, abort the operation and withdraw at a safe distance." But it was too late for extraction. The countdown had reached 0. The gravitational field generator activated with a sound like reality itself being torn apart. In the maintenance bay, Sarah and Michael Chun felt the fundamental forces of the universe respond to their calculations, warping space-time in ways that would have made Einstein weep with wonder and terror. The effect began small, a pinpoint of twisted gravity that expanded outward at the speed of light. The Karathi soldiers had exactly enough time to realize something was catastrophically wrong before the gravitational anomaly reached them. Bioarmor that could deflect energy weapons and resist chemical attack proved useless against gravitational forces that exceeded the surface gravity of neutron stars. The alien soldiers simply came apart, their molecular bonds overwhelmed by tidal forces that no living tissue could withstand. The twins had calculated the effect precisely. They felt the gravitational field wash over them with the strange calm of those who had chosen their own fate. Their bodies dissolved into component atoms, but their minds remained connected through quantum entanglement for just long enough to witness their weapons' full effect. The gravitational anomaly expanded beyond the maintenance bay, reaching through the ore processing facility and into the industrial complex where more Karathi search teams were hunting for survivors. Bio-soldiers, scanning equipment, and harvesting pods were caught in the expanding field of destruction. Subcommander Crick Thel had been coordinating the search from a command post 200 meters away when the anomaly reached her position. Her final transmission to Admiral Vexhai was cut off mid-syllable as the gravitational distortion tore through her bio-enhanced nervous system. In orbit, the effects were even more dramatic. The twins' weapon had been designed with their mother's xenobiological knowledge in mind, specifically targeting the organic nature of Karathi technology. The bioships that seemed so formidable against conventional weapons proved vulnerable to gravitational forces they had never been designed to resist. Admiral Vexhai felt his flagship shudder as gravitational waves propagated up from the planet's surface. The flesh-render's living hull began to develop stress fractures as its organic structure tried to adapt to forces beyond its evolutionary parameters. Systems that had functioned perfectly for centuries began failing as the ship's nervous system overloaded. "Damage report," the Admiral commanded, but the responses he received through his neural link were fragmentary and pain-filled. His bioship was dying, its living systems overwhelmed by gravitational effects that no organic technology could handle. The other vessels in the Karathi fleet fared no better. Biohulls that had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy began to rupture as gravitational tidal forces exceeded their structural limits. Ships that had seemed invulnerable to human weapons were tearing themselves apart from the inside out. But the twins' weapon had one more effect that even their brilliant minds had not fully anticipated. The gravitational anomaly they had created didn't simply dissipate when the power source was exhausted. Instead, it collapsed back on itself, creating a brief but intense burst of exotic particles that propagated through subspace. That burst was detected by monitoring stations across human space. Fleet Admiral Zhang Wei was reviewing tactical reports at Titan Station when the emergency alert reached his desk. The gravitational wave detection network had registered an anomaly unlike anything in their databases, emanating from a New Geneva system where a distress signal had been received 18 hours earlier. "Dr. Morrison, what am I looking at?" Zhang asked his chief science officer, a woman whose expertise in exotic physics made her invaluable for analyzing unusual phenomena. "Dr." Sarah Morrison studied the data with growing excitement and horror. "Sir, this appears to be an artificial gravitational anomaly. The energy signatures suggest controlled space-time manipulation on a scale we've never achieved. Someone in the New Geneva system has weaponized gravity itself." Zhang felt his blood turn cold. If the Karathi invaders had gravity weapons, the relief fleet he was assembling would be walking into a massacre. Could this be alien technology? "Negative, sir. The mathematical structure underlying the anomaly is distinctly human. I'm seeing theoretical frameworks that match published research from New Geneva's scientific community, specifically work by Dr. Elena Chun and her children on practical applications of gravitational field manipulation." The Admiral processed this information with growing amazement. Someone at New Geneva Colony had turned theoretical physics research into a working gravity weapon, powerful enough to register on detection equipment 3 star systems away. The implications were staggering. How powerful was this weapon? Dr. Morrison's voice was quiet with awe. Based on a gravitational wave amplitude, I estimate it generated localized gravitational fields exceeding 10,000 times Earth normal. Nothing organic could survive exposure to forces of that magnitude. And if the Karathi are using organic technology, then they just encountered a weapon that specifically counters their primary technological advantage. Sir, whoever built this device may have given us the key to defeating the entire Karathi fleet. Admiral Zhang immediately understood the strategic implications. For months, human forces had been at a severe disadvantage against Karathi bioships that could heal themselves and adapt to conventional weapons. But if gravity weapons could bypass those advantages, give me a priority channel to Fleet Command, he ordered, and prepare to accelerate the relief fleet's departure. I want every science vessel we can spare attached to this mission. Sir, what are your orders regarding the gravity weapon? Zhang paused, weighing military necessity against human cost. Someone at New Geneva had built humanity's first real answer to the Karathi invasion, but the energy levels required suggested the weapon's creators had paid for their success with their lives. Full analysis and reverse engineering, he said finally. If we can understand how they did it, we can build more. Better ones. The Karathi chose the wrong species to start harvesting. At New Geneva Colony, Dawn revealed the scope of the twins' success. The industrial complex had been devastated by the gravitational anomaly, but the alien forces that had occupied it were simply gone. Where Karathi soldiers and equipment had been, only empty space remained. The surviving colonists emerged from their bunkers to find a world scarred by battle, but free of invaders. In orbit, the hulks of Karathi bioships drifted helplessly, their organic systems dead or dying, their crews eliminated by forces they had never encountered before. Dr. Elena Chun was among the survivors. Her capture by the Karathi terminated when their extraction teams were destroyed. She stood in the ruins of her children's makeshift laboratory, studying the theoretical calculations they had left behind with a mixture of pride and heartbreak that threatened to overwhelm her. Her brilliant children had saved the colony, demonstrated humanity's capacity for fighting back, and given their species the key to victory against an enemy that had seemed unbeatable. But they had paid for that victory with their lives, dying as heroes before they had even finished being children. Dr. Chun, she turned to find Commander Torres approaching with a tablet displaying preliminary analysis of the weapon's effects. The military officer's face showed respect tinged with sorrow. The fleet relief force will be here in 6 hours, Torres reported, and Admiral Zhang specifically requested that all research data related to your children's work be preserved. They want to understand how the weapon functioned. Elena nodded, her scientist's mind already working despite her personal grief. Sarah and Michael had built something unprecedented, a weapon that turned theoretical physics into practical destruction. Their work would need to be studied, improved, and replicated if humanity was going to survive the war the Karathi had started. The calculations are complete, she said quietly. My children documented everything. The theory, the engineering modifications, even their final thoughts about potential improvements. Ma'am, if I may ask, how did they know it would work? Gravity weapons are theoretical at best. The energy requirements alone should have been impossible. Elena smiled through her tears, remembering her twins' unique collaboration. They understood something the Karathi didn't. Human ingenuity isn't just about building better tools. It's about finding ways to make the impossible work when the people you love are in danger. The woman looked up at the orbital debris that had once been the Karathi fleet, biological ships that had conquered species across the galaxy, but couldn't withstand the fury of 2 teenagers armed with physics and determination. The Karathi thought they understood us, she continued. They studied our broadcasts, analyzed our technology, calculated our military capabilities. But they never understood what happens when you threaten our children. Elena Chun began gathering her twins' research data, preparing to hand humanity's first gravity weapon specifications to the military forces that would carry their work across the galaxy. The Karathi Dominion had made a critical error when they seized Sarah and Michael Chun. They had awakened something in humanity that would ensure no other species ever made the same mistake. The war was just beginning, but the twins had given their people the weapon that would win it. 6 months after the Battle of New Geneva, as historians would later call it, Fleet Admiral Zhang Wei stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Retribution, watching the final Karathi stronghold burn in the light of an alien sun. The massive orbital fortress, once considered impregnable with its bioregenerative armor and living weapon systems, was tearing itself apart under the focused fire of 12 human gravity cannons. The weapons that had saved New Geneva Colony had been refined, improved, and mass-produced with the desperate efficiency that only an existential threat could inspire. What Sarah and Michael Chun had built in a maintenance bay with mining equipment, humanity's finest engineers had transformed into ship-mounted weapons capable of reducing entire fleets to cosmic dust. "Admiral, the fortress is breaking apart," reported Commander Lisa Park, her voice carrying satisfaction that 6 months of war had earned. "Gravitational stress is exceeding structural limits. Estimate complete destruction in 43 minutes. Zhang nodded, watching the alien structure twist and fragment as humanity's gravity weapons did what conventional weapons never could. The Karathi bioships that had seemed so formidable were helpless against forces that attacked their molecular bonds directly. No amount of healing or adaptation could overcome gravitational fields that exceeded the surface gravity of neutron stars. "Signal the fleet," Zhang ordered. "Prepare for final assault on the remaining bioships. I want every Karathi vessel in this system destroyed or captured." The human fleet that surrounded the dying fortress bore little resemblance to the ships that had existed before the war. Driven by necessity and the twins' revolutionary research, human shipyards had produced vessels specifically designed to fight the Karathi. Every major warship now carried gravity weapons, while specialized science vessels studied captured biotechnology for weaknesses. Dr. Sarah Morrison, now bearing the rank of captain and serving as Zhang's science advisor, monitored the weapon systems that had made this victory possible. The gravity cannons were marvels of engineering that combined human ingenuity with principles the Chun twins had died to discover. "Weapons performance is optimal," she reported. "The Mark 7 gravity projectors are showing 97% efficiency. The twins will be proud of what their work has become." Zhang's expression softened momentarily. The war had cost humanity dearly, but it had also revealed capabilities that no one had suspected. When faced with an enemy that seemed technologically superior, humans had done what they always did. They had found a way to fight back that their opponents never saw coming. "Dr. Morrison, have we received any response from the other Karathi fleet groups?" "Negative, sir. Intelligence reports suggest they've withdrawn to defensive positions in their core territories. The destruction of 7 major invasion fleets appears to have convinced them that humans are too dangerous to attack directly." It was a stunning reversal of fortune. 6 months earlier, the Karathi Dominion had been systematically harvesting human colonies, taking the brightest minds for their research complexes while enslaving the rest. The aliens had calculated human military capabilities with scientific precision and found them wanting. They had not calculated for human fury when children were threatened. The war that followed New Geneva had been unlike anything in galactic history. Human forces, armed with gravity weapons and driven by rage over the attempted kidnapping of the Chin twins, had pursued the Karathi with relentless determination. Every bioship destroyed was another step toward ensuring that no alien species would ever again consider human children legitimate targets. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Karathi fortress," Communications Officer Rodriguez reported. "They're requesting terms for surrender." Zhang considered the request with the cold calculation that war had taught him. The Karathi had shown no mercy when they invaded human space, taking scientists and children as specimens for their research programs. But Admiral Vexhai, captured during the New Geneva cleanup, had provided valuable intelligence in exchange for his life. Put them through, Zhang decided. The holographic display showed a Karathi commander whose chitinous features bore signs of stress the human xenobiologists had learned to recognize. The alien's natural confidence had been replaced by something that looked remarkably like fear. Human Fleet Commander, the Karathi spoke through translation software. I am Sub-Admiral Krextai of the 73rd Harvesting Fleet. I request terms for the surrender of this installation and remaining bioships. Sub-Admiral, Zhang replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 6 months teaching aliens to fear humanity. You are in no position to request anything. However, I am prepared to accept your unconditional surrender. What assurances can you provide for the treatment of survivors? Zhang paused, remembering the recordings Sarah and Michael Chun had left behind. Their final message had included a request that any captured aliens be treated with the mercy they had not shown human civilians. The twins had died as they lived, believing that intelligence and compassion were humanity's greatest strengths. Surrendering personnel will be treated according to the Terran military code, Zhang said finally. Your wounded will receive medical attention, your scientists will be debriefed and released, and your military personnel will be held as prisoners of war pending formal peace negotiations. The alien commander's relief was visible even across species lines. We accept your terms, but I must ask the weapon that destroyed our bioships. How did you develop gravitational manipulation technology so rapidly? Our intelligence indicated humans lacked the theoretical knowledge for such applications. Zhang felt a surge of fierce pride. 2 children figured out how to kill your ships using mining equipment and physics textbooks. We just improved on their design. The transmission ended in stunned, alien silence. In the months that followed, the Treaty of Titan officially ended the Karathi War with terms that reflected humanity's newfound position in the galaxy. The Karathi Dominion agreed to cease all harvesting operations, return captured humans, and provide technological compensation for the damages caused by their invasion. More importantly, word of humanity's victory had spread across known space. Species that had been conquered or threatened by the Karathi began reaching out to establish diplomatic relations with the humans who had accomplished the impossible. The galaxy's political balance had shifted overnight. Dr. Elena Chan stood in the memorial garden on New Geneva, reading the inscription on the monument dedicated to her children. The simple words capture their sacrifice better than any elaborate ceremony could have. Sarah and Michael Chun, age 16. They gave their lives so that human children could grow up free. The garden had become a pilgrimage site for families across human space. Parents brought their children to see where 2 teenagers had changed the course of galactic history. Students came to study the theoretical physics displays that explained how the twins had weaponized gravity itself. Military officers came to understand how desperate courage could overcome seemingly impossible odds. But Elena came simply to remember her children and the future they had died to protect. Dr. Chun, she turned to find a young woman in fleet uniform approaching with obvious respect. The officer's insignia marked her as a senior physicist with a gravitational weapons research division. I'm Commander Jessica Martinez, the woman said. I wanted to thank you for your children's contribution to our research. The Mark 9 gravity projectors we're developing are based directly on their theoretical framework. Elena smiled, recognizing the name. Martinez had been among the scientists who reverse-engineered the twins' weapon, turning their desperate improvisation into humanity's primary space-based weapon system. Sarah and Michael will be fascinated by the improvements you've made, Elena replied. They always believed their initial design could be refined for better efficiency and reduced power requirements. Actually, that's why I wanted to speak with you. We're establishing a new research institute focused on advanced gravitational physics, the Chin Institute for Applied Spacetime Research. We'd like you to serve as Director Emeritus, if you're willing. Elena felt tears forming as she understood the honor being offered. Her children's names would live on in the institution dedicated to pushing the boundaries of the science they had died to advance. Future generations of human scientists would build on their work, ensuring that humanity never again faced an enemy without the means to fight back. They would love that, she said softly. Sarah always said that the best discoveries were the ones that inspired other people to discover even more amazing things. Commander Martinez nodded, her own expression showing the deep respect that the Chun twins commanded throughout human space. Ma'am, if I may ask, do you think they knew? When they activated that weapon, did they understand they were starting a revolution in human military capability? Elena looked up at the stars visible through the garden's atmospheric dome, remembering her brilliant children and the final calculations they had left behind. Their work had included theoretical speculation about improved designs, potential applications, and the broader implications of gravitational manipulation technology. They knew exactly what they were doing, she said with absolute certainty. My children died to save this colony, but they also died to give humanity the tools we need to protect ourselves. They understood that their weapon was just the beginning. The monument's engraving caught the light of New Geneva's sun, casting shadows that seemed to dance with the memory of two teenagers who had refused to let aliens steal their future. Around the galaxy, human ships patrolled with weapons that bore their names, ensuring that the Karathi Dominion's mistake would never be repeated by any species. Sarah and Michael Chun had been children when they died, but their legacy had made humanity a force that even the most powerful galactic civilizations treated with respect and caution. They had answered the Karathi threat with pure human fury expressed through the fundamental forces of reality itself. And in doing so, they had taught the galaxy that there were some lines no species should ever cross. Threatening human children was the most dangerous mistake any alien civilization could make. The twins had made sure that lesson would be remembered across the stars for as long as humanity reached for the heavens. Their revenge had become humanity's greatest gift to itself, the knowledge that no enemy, however advanced, could defeat the combination of human love, human intelligence, and human determination to protect what mattered most. The galaxy was a safer place because two teenagers had decided that some things were worth dying for, and humanity would make sure it stayed that way.